Hey guys, this is Shelby with Rogers Public Library. This week for Makerspace at your place, I'm going to show you guys how to make a pressed flower collage, right? So there's two steps. The first is pressing the flowers, right? So this is something you kind of need to be careful about, right? You can't just pick flowers anywhere, right? Especially if it's on somebody's property that you don't know them or right? So I guess there's a couple rules. The first is that picking wildflowers is usually a bad idea, especially because there are some here in Arkansas that are endangered, right? That you can get in a lot of trouble for picking. So you'll want to try to pick flowers that somebody's grown and that you have their permission to pick. So things like roses or tulips or daffodils, and that aren't just growing wildly. That said, there are some flowers that they're not cultivated, but they're not really wild. They're I guess weeds would be a good word for it. That a lot of people they don't like or they don't want in their yard, and they don't really have any problem with you picking, right? So one is the dandelion, right? Um, these when they first blossom, they're nice and yellow, and then they dry out, and they get those nice kind of like feathery parts. Those don't dry too well, but these when they're in this stage do. Um, these are clover blossoms, right? You can actually you can press the whole part of the clover, not just the blossoms. There are also other types of clover blossoms that look like this. I tried to find some out and about, right? But where I looked, the grass had just been cut, so I couldn't find any because these are tall. These tend to be a lot shorter than these. But I do have a pressed one, right? So pressing is really easy. You just basically take like these, and you'll get a big book. We would prefer if you don't use a library book, you'll use one that you already have at your house, like a dictionary or encyclopedia or something like that. Um, this is, I think, the same clover as the one I showed you guys, but it's dried now, so you can't see it, right? First step is you get a piece of paper like this. You set it down, then you put your flowers on there, and then you get another piece of paper, and then you just press it, right? Right? So that's the easy part. The hard part is you have to wait, right? These have been pressing for about 4 days now, and I think they're ready to use. If you're not going to be using them in a collage, if you just want them to be on their own, you'll want to press them for longer, right? But so right. So now when you're doing the collage, right, the first thing is you want a nice sturdy material to use it on. You don't want to just use paper. So you can use something like this, right? This is the part of a cereal box. It's a nice paper board. Or use something like this, right? This is this watercolor paper, but it's a nice thick paper that's kind of been treated so that it's not super absorbent. This is one that I made earlier. So it's a thicker piece of paperboard similar to the cereal, and I just coated it with a thin coat of paint first, and that's to make it so that the glue isn't going to, well, first it looks nicer, and the other part is the glue won't sink in as much, and there's less of a chance of it warping, right? That's what you're trying to prevent, is you want it to be as flat as it can be, right? But I've already kind of done most of the preparatory stuff for this, right? I already have my flowers. And then I went through magazines, right? I have a bunch of these video game magazines in my house. So I just went through and I tore out some pages that I thought looked, they were nice colors, right? And I cut them into pretty fun shapes. So, right, I have some weird flowery shapes. And then there's these, I don't know what you would call that shape. It looks kind of like a batarang, right? But as for the collaging, right? This isn't an art. I don't want to tell you guys how to do it. But this part is really freeform, just what looks nice to you. If you want to try to learn more about collaging and about how people do it, I would suggest this book. This is Radiant Child. It's a biography of Jean-Michel Basquiat. He's an American artist from the 80s. He's one of my favorite artists, and he does a lot of collage and a lot of mixed media stuff, kind of like this, but much above my level. All right, but we're using Mod Podge. You can use glue, or you can even make paste with something like wheat or cornstarch, right? But so we're going to be coating this, and I'm going to lay down some of these clover leaves. They're very gentle, or they're very delicate, so that one just broke. So I got that. Lay this down. I just should have glued the bottom first. All right. Okay, right. Let's see. I'm gonna tear this up. If you do use dandelions, you'll want to be really careful because they do get they're very delicate, right? You have to be careful when you're coating them. For this one, I used some dandelions and I used some clover. I also got some daffodils from my yard, right? And I think they turned out really well because they're a lot sturdier than a dandelion is, and you don't have to be as careful around them. So this one I just brushed over it. There's some more petals over here. Another good one to use would probably be like a rose. I don't have any roses in my yard, but I do have some Rose of Sharon that haven't come in yet. But as it warms up and the spring goes on to summer, there's going to be a lot more flowers for me to pick from. Right? Right now we're pretty limited. Maybe half of my daffodils are blooming. There's not a lot. All right, so yeah, I'm kind of pretty okay. It's kind of abstract. It's just a bunch of shapes, right? It's nothing too fancy. One thing to note is that, right, when you're doing paper, it's very thin. And even though this isn't super absorbent, because it's magazine paper, one coat is going to be fine. But the flowers, they don't lay flat, right? They're 3-dimensional, and if you just do one coat, it's not really going to protect them. You need to let them dry and then do another coat in about 30 or 40 minutes when it's not wet anymore. It doesn't need to be 100% dry, but it just can't be wet. Yeah. And right. So if you do want to do this one's more of a traditional, I guess you say it's a landscape, right? I got a lot of greens to make like flower stalks. And then the rest of it was the petals, right? Some of them are actual petals and the rest is just shapes that I cut out. Either a lot of them are freehanded or I traced them. And then others I got by doing this, right? Where it's like making a snowflake, right? Where you fold it into quarters and then you can cut in the middle, right? So you can get circles or stars or things like that are more symmetrical, kind of like a flower is. Right. But that's what I have for you guys this week. I hope you have fun. I'll see ya.